Hi guys, this is Mr. Shaffer from Shaffer's Top Form Karate. Today we're going to be breaking down some techniques that we see in our katas, and specifically in Geicho Yibu Sunguk. It's the first time we see this concept being introduced through the Geicho forms, and it's the concept of going from a back stance on your block and executing the block at a back stance, and transitioning out of that back stance into a forward stance with the reverse punches. So there's two specific things happening there that we really want to pay a lot of attention to, and they're a very important concept when we're talking about the martial arts, especially in the Chuck Norris system, the way that we execute our hand strikes, whether it's a strike or a block. And it's a striking mentality. So in order for it to be a striking mentality, it brings into a couple concepts that I talk about a lot with my students. It's the two golden nuggets. Golden nugget number one of the Chuck Norris system is the hips have to help the hands. What that means is the hips and the core have to be going in the same direction of the hand strike to help the hand strike and deliver the most impact and to be as most effective as it can be. So golden nugget number one of the Chuck Norris system, the hips have to help the hand, and that is something that really comes into play when we're doing that third set of Geicho Yibu Sunguk. That same set is really in United Fighting Arts Federation form number one as well, except we're lunging into that initial move rather than stepping into it in Geicho Yibu Sunguk. But the execution after that is the same. It's the same sequence of moves. Okay. So golden nugget number one, the hips have to help the hands. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I wanted to explain that. So the second golden nugget of the Chuck Norris system is what I call the dynamic duo. And what the dynamic duo is we want to combine two methods of generating power to make the strike even more effective. So if we add one method of generating power, which we do a lot in the Chuck Norris system, is we torque, we turn. You know, we use our core and our body to help accelerate our hands whenever we're doing it. Another method of generating power is a forward thrusting motion. So if you combine those two together, the torque and the forward thrust, you get what I call the dynamic duo. You get two multipliers when it comes to making that strike even more effective. So the very first time you start to see both of these things come into play is in Geicho Yibu Sunguk through the Geicho series. Also in United Fighting Arts Federation form number one. So let's talk about that a little bit. So when I talk about the hips helping the hands, okay, what that means is when you do the very first block in that set, in set three, you're going to end in a back stance with the low block position. Okay, that's the end position. All right. In order for the hips helping the hand, they have to be going in the same direction. So if my hand starts here and goes this direction, my hips have to be going in that same rotation direction for it to add anything to my hand strike. Okay, so they can't end here. So the hips can't be here while the block is being executed. Okay, the hips have to be here so they can transition in the same direction that the block is going. And that's the really important part. That's the golden nugget number one, the hips helping the hand, or the core helping the hand. So what we want to do is, if we're going to end here in a back stance position, okay, we need to, as we're transitioning into this particular end position, our hips need to be back in this orientation when the hand is in the position for the block. Okay, the other hand's obviously pointing to the center line of the direction you're going, and the hips are going to be the thing that initiates this move. So the hips are going to be the thing that initiate. It's going to pull the shoulder is going to pull the hand, and that sequencing is going to make this strike very, very impactful. Okay, or this block very impactful. I say strike and block a lot, but they're the same. So if I say hand strikes, if I say a strike, and you know it's a block, it's the same thing. Okay, so that's what we really want to talk about. So when we execute this block, this low block, our hips are going to be here. And we're going to initiate the hips, which is going to pull the hand in the direction to make that strike impactful. Okay, if our hips just stay right where they're at in the good back stance position, we're in the good back stance position here, and it's all arms, it's just as fast as you can move your arms. The hips aren't adding anything to that hand strike. So it's not being done to the maximum ability, the maximum effect, okay? So if you combine the hips helping the hand, that block becomes more impactful, okay? So I'm going to show it a little bit from a side position so you can kind of see what I'm talking about from this orientation as well. Okay, so we're in this back stance position. You know, as we step, we're stepping into this motion, or we've lunged to this position in UFAF 1. We're going to be here with our hips in this orientation, and we're loaded up for this block, okay? So from this position here, our hips are going to start the motion, and it's going to execute the hand straight down. So the hips are the thing that started that motion, and then the hand finished it, okay? So we've got to this position, and we're here. The hips go, which executes and catapults the hand in the position it needs to be. So that's the golden nugget number 1 of the Chuck Norris system. The hips have to help the hand. So when we do these sets, especially in Geicho Ibu Sanguk, it's really important that we have that concept happening on all 4 of the blocks that are going down the center. The low block, the inside block, the high block, and the outside block, okay? How we transition as we step forward is a little bit different in all 4 of those blocks. The last 2 are very similar, but the other ones are a little bit different. So we're gonna break that down a little bit. We're gonna talk about that concept first, and then we're gonna circle back to the golden nugget number 2 of the Chuck Norris system, which was, you remember? The dynamic duo. So that's what I call it. So we're gonna talk a little bit about how that works. So we're just gonna focus on the golden nugget number 1 first, the hips helping the hands. So I'm gonna back up a little bit so you can see what we're doing. So in Geicho Ibu Sanguk, we just ended in this position here off the set 2, and we're gonna be starting into the set 3 here. Now my right foot is already in the position it needs to be for the back stance, so it doesn't need to move. My knee is over top of the foot is where it needs to be, and so that part is kind of already in place. The hips are already in place. So what we're doing is we start to look and we load for this position, or our hands pass through the load position. The foot steps where it needs to be. Our hips are here. We're already in the correct position to execute this low block properly. So the very first low block is actually in a back stance. It's probably the easiest of all 4 of the blocks, okay? So we're here, our hips turn, we execute that low block where it needs to be, and that's the really, really hard thing to do. So we can just start doing that particular move over and over again, where we go here, we execute the low block. That is a drill all by itself. It wouldn't hurt just to rep that like 100 times, you know, trying to get that concept of keeping the hips where they need to be and helping the hand, okay? But I'm going to talk about the other blocks here going down this set, and then we'll jump back into this and circle back and show you the golden nugget number 2. So we're here, and after every block of this set, we throw a reverse punch. So we're transitioning from a back stance, and we're throwing a reverse punch into a forward stance. So that's happening each time, and that's where the dynamic duo comes into play. But we're going to come back to that. So we do the low block, we do the reverse punch. Now the next block is an inside block. That's a different hip action. That's a inside hip action versus an outside hip action. The other 3 blocks are outside hip action. So this one's a little bit more, a little different. So as we step forward, our hands fold up. As we step forward where we need to be, our foot-wise, shoulder width apart. We're in the inside block. Our hips are now facing forward, okay? So the inside block is going to go this way, which means my core has to go the same direction. So stepping forward with your hips straight in this case is the proper kind of loading position. So we're here. We start our hips to move, which pulls our elbow across so that we can execute the inside block. Remember, it's core, shoulder, arm, and hand. That's the sequence of things, okay? So we're here, as we transition into a back stance, we pull that inside block across, which makes that hips helping the hand on the inside block. So we're here, the hips pull it across, which means the hips are going this way, and the block is going the same direction, okay? So we're here, we load, we start the hips to motion into a back stance, which starts the whole chain reaction. We execute that inside block. And again, shooting out the reverse punch, executing that. So these next two blocks, the high block and the outside block, there's a lot happening on this step. So if we do these the way that we need to do these, we actually have to start our step and position and load our body correctly while we're stepping, so that when we root to the ground and our feet hit the ground, we can execute this block with the same concept that we did on the first two, where our hips are helping our hand. But the only way we can do that is for our feet to be anchored into the ground. So we got to complete the footwork first, a split second first, before the block is actually executed. Okay, so we just did the reverse punch. As we step through, we got to get our hips from this position to this position. So they got to turn a full 90-degree turn during the load so that we can execute the high block appropriately. Okay, so it's super important. So after we do the reverse punch, as we start to step, our body's going to turn and load. Now we're in this position where our hips are here. This foot is about where it needs to be. So then we can start the hips going back in this direction when the high block happens. Okay. So again, so you're here. We just did the reverse punch. As we start to step for the high block, we turn. We've executed here. The hips help the hand, and we execute the high block going forward. Okay. So how that looks like in real time is we just did the reverse punch. As we step and turn, we execute the high block. What we typically see, and what a lot of students will do, is they'll just step straight and turn into a back stance position. Well, when you do that, in the outside block orientation or outside hip action, where your arm's going this direction, and we transition here, our hips are going that way. So we don't want our hips going that way and our hands going this way. So you got to do that full complete rotation here, where you step and you get the hips loaded in this position, so they have the ability to help the hand coming back for the high block. Okay. So hopefully you guys got that. So then obviously you do the reverse punch after. The same thing happens on this next block, the outside block, that we just did on the high block. So as we step, we got to step and get our hips completely turned to this orientation so they can come back on the back stance to help the outside block. Okay, so you're here, we just did the reverse punch. Again, as you step and get the hips here. So the hips start the motion, which executes the outside block. One more time. So you just did the reverse punch. As you step, you're here, loaded up for the outside blocks, hips facing here, execute the outside block, and that is really what we want. We want the hips helping the hand on the outside block, and then obviously you finish this set with a reverse punch Kia, okay? So to show all four of these techniques, I'm going to do it from the Geicho Ibu Sungap kata, where we're actually stepping into the kata rather than lunging, okay? So you're here, and we're in this position here. We just did the punch. You're going to do the low block reverse punch first. So it's coming here where you're here, your hips are loaded, and you execute the low block. All right, so you're here, you look, low block, reverse punch, inside block, reverse punch, high block, reverse punch, outside block, reverse punch Kia. All right, so that's the concept of the hips helping the hand going from a back stance to a forward stance. So really important stuff. The second part of the lesson is the second golden nugget, which was the dynamic duo. And if you remember, what I meant with the dynamic duo was that you combine two methods of generating power to help kind of maximize the hand strike that's coming. And so I'm going to show this, I'm going to demonstrate this from the side angle. All right, we've already showed that we torque, or we turn our body. Turning is one method of generating power. You use your core and you can turn really fast. That starts a lot of motion, a lot of power. That's a method of generating power. Another method is going from a back stance and there is a forward projection happening on your forward stance. So when you combine those two, it makes the strike even better. So you're here, we just executed the low block. So now turning into a forward stance, which makes your hips go from here to here. So there's a turn happening. And you want to see a forward drive, or a forward kind of motion happening at the same time, okay? So you're here on this reverse punch. We're going to turn, but yet we're also going to drive forward into a good forward stance position. So that is the dynamic duo. That's something that we really want to showcase. And a lot of times what we see is I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but if our knot of our belt is directly in this, over top of this T, when we see a lot of students, what they do is they try to go real fast with going from a back stance to forward stance, but all they do is just turn in place. And the knot of my belt, or my core, my body, didn't transition forward at all. In fact, what it did was it actually stood up a little bit. So if I don't go forward and I turn, the only way for me to go is up. So now you got part of your energy going up while the reverse punch is going this way. Again, not helping. All right. So the dynamic duo, meaning turning and a drive forward, needs to happen on every reverse punch. So that set going down the middle, those 4 blocks with a reverse punch afterwards, such high level concepts happening there. It's something that is a very important concept to get your head around, and it's something that we want everybody to kind of be aware of. And once you get that set down, now every time you step into a block or a strike, this same concept applies. The hips have to help the hand. Anytime you transition from a back stance to a forward stance, you need to have that dynamic duo with a forward drive as well as a turn. So those are the 2 concepts that are really important and something that I really wanted to stress. So hopefully everybody had a little bit of fun. Instructors, you guys can add some different drills in there. You can break it down. You can do one of those techniques over and over again. You can add putting pads out so that you actually strike the pads with the blocks and the punches, so that you can actually feel the impact and the improvement that happens when you do it correctly versus when you do it kind of the ways that we don't want to have happen. So remember, gold nugget number 1, hips up the hand. Gold nugget number 2, dynamic duo. We got to see both of these in the Chuck Norris system because we're a striking style and we strike with our hands, with our punches and our blocks and everything like that. So our core and our hips have to help our hand, and we want to combine as many methods of generating power as we can so that we can make that impact, that strike as impactful as possible. So thanks everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed the lesson.